I'm not going to do a joke about someone on television in the news. I'm not going to talk about Will Smith punching Chris Rock and then break down his character, what he's revealed about his personality. I wouldn't talk about that because my persona doesn't allow those opinions to come out.
So my first 3 or 4 years, I would make very, like, I don't want to say mean jokes about myself, but like really self-deprecating. And the audience, you would feel them like be upset at me. Because on stage, I'm a very...
is, Michael? Do you know what that is?
No.
Because you're very unattractive.
There it is. That's what I thought it was. So Adam Bloom has a book, Finding Your Comedic Genius. I want to talk, before we get to the book, because I think the book's phenomenal. Rudy actually tells every person he knows to read this book, and he's the one that told me to read it, because I've tried other books, and I was like, whatever. But your book really stuck with me. But I want to know the backstory. Like, how'd you get into comedy at what age?
So I was 9 years old when I decided I was going to be a comedian. And then it was like a little, back of my mind, a bit like when someone comes out of the closet. They've known for years, but they tell people later. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I did I went to see a guy called Harry Hill, who blew my mind. And 3 weeks later, I was doing it. I was like, it was actually, it's the only selfless thought I've had as a comedian. I remember thinking, I'd love to make a room of people feel this good. And I don't think I've had a selfless thought since that moment 31 years ago. When you have a great gig, you have to remember it's their night out. You go, I stormed it, I killed. You go, and what happened when you killed? Hundreds of people had a good time. That is the end product, isn't it? So yeah. But I remember thinking I'd love to make people this happy. And then I was doing it like 3 weeks later. So I was 23 years old and 5 days when I did my first gig.
And how did it go your first time on stage?
Well, thank God I got beginner's luck. Thank God, because my 6th gig was a car crash. And I always wonder, if my first gig had been my 6th gig, would I have ever done my second? And I like to think that I'm a fighter, I'm resilient, I'll get back. But who knows? Think of all the thousands of people who got unlucky with their first audience and then just went, what was I ever thinking? Then went back to not doing it, So luckily, that drive in your first gig, there was something in me, like a monster in me going, rah! I felt like, nothing's going to stop me, because the nerves, as you both know, before your first gig are off the scale, right? Like, I respect anyone who does stand-up, no matter how good or bad they are. In actual fact, in a way, I respect the bad ones more, because they got back up having not done well.
What's interesting is most comics, and I would say most that we talk to, have a great first set. And I think it might be because of the setup, because I remember when they brought me on my first time ever, they're like, hype it up. This is his first time ever, So I think the audience is like, they already give you that. All right, we're gonna be receptive to what he says. Like I'm talking about my first time. They introduced me, and this is first time ever performing. Show them some love. Come on, people, Michael Yo. You're
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But they'll only be tolerant for so long. There'll be
100%.
I mean, I'm not saying they're going to start heckling you, but if you're not funny, there's only so much support you can give somebody.
Are you the type of person that likes watching people bomb? Does it tickle your funny bone? Watching somebody just die on stage?
No, it's painful. I tell you what, I think the funniest thing is watching a really good comedian that you respect die on stage. That's hilarious.
I've seen that. Yes, I've seen that.
I was back home in my hometown, Minneapolis, this weekend. Michael and I were doing shows there. And on Thursday night, I went to a room that is notoriously a great room. Always, anybody who gets up on stage there always kills.
It's a kill box. Yeah. It's a kill box.
Every
kill
time.
Box.
Doesn't matter.
I like that.
And when every time I would watch somebody go up for their first time and absolutely destroy, I would think, I'm not going to see that person in 6 months. Because there's no way that they have it in them to be able to come back from having that huge high your first time on stage and getting that big of laughs. But the people who bomb and I see them coming back the next week, I go, okay, you're making the right choice. Mm-hmm. You ate it the first time and you didn't care. You are coming back again. And that's the guy where I go, okay, in 6 months, if you're still doing this, you got a shot of turning this into something, because you got resilience.
It's also the industry. What I love about comedy, and this is why I really got into comedy. I was on this show called Chelsea lately. Joe Coy told me I should do comedy. He became my mentor. If you listen to the podcast, you know this story. But what I really saw when I hung out with comics and I got into the industry, 95% of the comics are super lazy. And if you work hard and if you're a hustler, I felt like I was already starting way ahead of the other people. Most comics I hung out with, they woke up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They stayed out all night. It was more about hooking up with chicks than the actual comedy. And on my side, I was a lot older. I was 37 when I started comedy. So I was already past all that. So I felt like I was a hustler. I was a hard worker. I really wanted to get up all the time, would drive 4 or 5 hours for $25, where a lot of comics wouldn't do that. So I felt like just being a hard worker and hustling will move you past 95% of the comics pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's not always down to talent. That's about that down to self-belief, right? So if you have talent, and that self-belief, which you clearly do, it's an invincible combination. But I mean, I won't name names, but I know a very successful comedian who's just quite talented, and I think if they were honest, they'll go, "Yeah, I'm very hardworking." But people look down on those people like they're cheating. I mentioned this in the book. Talent is free. It's what you do, your talent you can be proud of. You can't sit around going, I'm really talented, but I don't work hard, and that's why I'm not getting anywhere. You should be ashamed of yourself because talent is free.
When you started comedy, when did you figure out, oh, I have a talent for writing for other people? Because I know some people like myself, I only can write in my voice, but people like you who have worked with a lot of comedians, some that will come out and say it, some that won't, like you write a lot of material for them. When did you discover you could do that?
2003, when I began 9 years, somebody who is now globally huge got their first TV show and said, I want you to write for me. And it was a disaster. He said, do as little or as much as you want in 8 hours, whatever it was, 4 hours, meaning just I'm paying for your time. So I sat there, had 6 or 7 ideas, submitted them, and he rang me up and went, is that it? And I went, well, yeah, you said as little or as much. But what he meant was, I'm paying you for your time. I was hoping for more. So let's just say I was writing for someone now, and I looked at 4 hours work, and it wasn't very much. I'd do another 2 hours. They're not going to know, right? They get 6 hours. All that matters is I'm going to give them enough stuff to be pleased with. I wouldn't do 3 hours because I've got a conscience. But my point is, I blew that opportunity big time. And he got in touch with me 6 months ago. So what's that? 21 years later.
Wow.
And I was going to write for him 21 years later. Yeah. But my point is, it wasn't until about 2005, 2006 that it slowly built. The word got out that I could write for people, but it very slow. I mean, it was one person every 6 months and sometimes once a year, just very gradual. And then you get better at doing it. You have to go, you could say Rudy now, you could say, well, what would Rudy say now? If someone dropped a glass of milk on the floor and it landed on his sneakers, you can imagine Rudy's reaction would be different to, let's say, a cousin of yours, right? So you go with their personality, or you,
or me. Yeah, I love Jordans. If somebody spills something on my jaw, we fighting. Like Rudy would be like, "Oh man, no big deal, no big deal." Me, I'd be like, "Yo, watch out, bro."
Yeah. I'd be more angry about the fact that milk is $2.50 a gallon right now.
So that's what you think when you write for someone. You just go in their voice. You almost go into a trance and just think like them. And the stronger their persona, the easier it is to write for them. And when someone approaches me who hasn't got a persona, I say you need to come back in a few years when you're a little bit more, when you know who you are better. I don't say you're not good. And that's not often the case. It's just a case of you have to have a persona for me to be able to work with. And the stronger the persona, the easier it is. You think of a scene in Seinfeld where George walks in the room and sees something, he'll have a neurotic, self-absorbed perspective on it.
I always heard, I'm writing a sitcom right now about my life and characters in my life. And one of the best notes I got from a big exec goes about the script. You don't have to see the names to know who's talking in your script. You know exactly who the character is without the names. And that's what we all aim, like, especially my comedy, since my mom is such a strong voice, my dad, my wife, everybody, my kids. When you read a line, or you already know where it comes from. So that's like where you want to be.
I would probably say I wrote for 5 or 6 people before I was able to write in their voice. Sometimes I just write jokes, and that's a mistake. You don't write just lines. You got to go, what are their characters? There's a bit in my book when I say find 3 words to describe your persona. If you can think of those, if somebody's cynical, superior, smug, then they'd go, I want you to write a joke about TK Maxx. So
or that's Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais. That you just described Ricky Gervais,
Ha ha
basically.
ha ha. But sure,
Right?
sure. But you know, yeah. But somebody who's full of joy of life would talk about how cheap the stuff is. I was just everywhere I looked, there was stuff, and I had to try on stuff, and the excitement was trying on stuff that was too small but might be too big, and you just hope for the best, right? Whereas a cynical person would be look at all these poor people shopping for stuff they don't even like, right? So they're complete different perspectives on the same thing. But I suppose 5 or 6 people, and then the word got out. And then people also like I offer someone a joke in a car journey, and they go, "Oh, that's great." And then 2 years later, they get a bit of success, and they go, "Do you want to write for me?" And I go, "Yeah, what made you choose me?" And they go, "Do you remember that car journey to Cardiff? You gave me that joke." And I remember thinking, so it's good karma, because you must give each other toppers and tags in dressing rooms. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if you do that, it's such good karma, because I'm not doing it to get anything out of it. You do it because you've got a good idea for somebody else. So then gradually, but I'll tell you a nice statistic. The book came out in 2023. And I'd written for 50 people in 20 years. Since the book's come out, I've written for another 55 in 18 months.
I'm sure this has happened. Like a big comic you're excited to work with, you write some stuff, and they're like, "Nah, that's not it."
I've only failed in the early stages. I haven't failed recently.
Really? Oh, that's great.
But the thing is, when I say haven't failed, if you give somebody 10 minutes of material, and they try 7 of it and 5 of it works, and they got 5 minutes of stuff overnight, that's very good, because you watch Jerry Seinfeld on that documentary Comedian. He said it took him 3 or 4 months to write a new 20 minutes of comedy, right? We know how slow it is. So if you chuck someone 10 minutes of stuff and they try 7 of it and 5 works, that's overnight 5 minutes of stuff. It takes me on my own stuff organically. It can take me a month to come out with 5 minutes of stuff.
Why does it take you longer for your own stuff than other people's?
I got a higher quality bar.
I wish more people had that.
Right?
I'm joking, because I don't sit down to write for me. I let it come to me walking down the street or on stage. I've got a friend who's got like a mansion. He's a comedian, and he's got a live-in cleaner, and he showed me around his house, and it was immaculate. And he said, "Oh, this is the cleaner's bedroom." And he opened the room. It was a fucking mess.
Yeah, there's an old saying. My family owned a roofing company, and there's an old saying that says, "The roofer's house always leaks," which means I'm too busy working for other people to be able to take care of my own stuff.
Yeah, that's it. But also, I don't enjoy. I don't like sitting down for myself. I don't know what it is. I let it come to me walking down the street. And also, by the way, and this is not faking humility, this is true. When you write for somebody else, they give you their ideas. So there are already nuggets of ideas. So you will tweak it, but the core idea is always there. Or not always. I might add a whole new bit. But the point is, if you've got a premise and I rewrite it, add tags and tangents, the clay is there. The clay is there to mold. So writing from scratch is a lot harder than someone giving you an idea, because they've given you some ingredients.
Like, let's just throw it out there, because I'm interested in this world. What's your take on, because I found out about 8 years ago, one of my friends that, he was a new friend and established comedian in Los Angeles, but not big, but well respected. And he told me that I was shocked when I found out some people let other people write their full special, like their entire special. I've had one comedian said, "I'm just an entertainer. Everybody writes my stuff," and was very open about it.
I don't mind saying this. I think it's acceptable. I met Louis C.K. before he was big, and he said he was writing for Chris Rock, and there were 12 of them in a meeting room.
Yeah, it was Chris Rock, Wanda Sykes, Bill Burr, and I mean, it was more in the room as well. I mean, you're talking about all-star cast,
Wow. He said there were 6 black and 6 white.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like the OJ trial.
Yeah, right. What's funny about that is that Chris Rock loves to perform in West Palm Beach because it's old white people. And he goes, if I can make these old white people laugh, I can make anybody laugh.
That's great. Well, I had the same philosophy with my mum. If a part of the book looked a bit convoluted, I handed it over to my 81-year-old mum and said, "Read this." She's not a comedian, doesn't want to be a comedian. Yep. The 81's not that relevant. The point is, it was somebody couldn't be further from the industry. And only once did she say, you lost me at the end. So my point was, it's the same thing. I'm trying my stuff out on old non-comedian. And if she understands it, then anyone doing stand-up's obviously going to understand it because they're already in the zone. So that was my same philosophy.
So I want to know, what do you think is too much? If somebody puts out an hour special, is 30 minutes too much? Or it's if they want somebody to write the whole hour, that's fine too. Where's your take on that?
Well, it depends on what kind of comedy you do. But first of all, let's say I've helped somebody with an hour show. I would have added 3 or 4 tags in each routine, reworded a few bits. But as I said, the core is still there. The core. Okay. Yeah. Now, I think stand-up, if it's coming from either creative place, as in inventive, or it becomes, say, Mitch Hedberg, or it comes from an honest place, so Richard Pryor, what it is doing, it's a celebration of a mind. For me, when I'm on stage and I'm doing my thing, and if I'm improvising, you're getting it raw. And if I'm doing material, you're getting the thought process I originally had. To me, stand-up's a celebration of someone's mind. So if that person's staying on stage and the audience are clapping your mind and it's not your mind, I would feel a bit empty inside because I feel, what are we exactly celebrating? Now, the entertainer made a very good point. He's got the material, she's got the material, the audience laugh, everyone goes away happy. Hey, you made a room full of people feel good. What's wrong with that, right? Mm-hmm. But that's almost acting now, isn't it? You've been given a script like a play, in a play. It's a one-man or one-woman play, and you're just the actor. But for me, it's the thrill. When you know how it feels. You do a brand new bit, and there's that boom. It's the best feeling in the world. And, I've told you, Michael, you trade on a similar thing to me, which is honesty.
Yes.
So if you're 100%. Sharing how you feel, about what happened when your child got bullied at school for the first time, and you're talking about your feelings, there's a sincerity to that. So if someone else says to you, why don't you pretend you felt this? Well, then you're really acting because you didn't feel this.
Yeah, true.
So if you're lying about the kid being bullied and you cried and this happened, and the joke's because when you cried, the tear fell down the salt when the kid's eye, he's crying more because your tears than it was from the bully, and the irony that your tears are causing him more pain, right? If that didn't happen, then you're not going to be able to be as sincere selling that. So I think that if you, like Jimmy Carr does 2-line jokes, right?
Yes.
He's not a gang rapist, but he's a gang rapist in the joke. We laugh because it's shocking, but we know it's not true. I don't think it matters so much if he has a writer because he doesn't mean what he says.
The greatest feeling is starting with one line for me, and then it turning into a 10-minute bit. It's just crazy how it keeps building and building. And I've seen Rudy. Rudy started with me like a year ago, but I met him like 3 years ago. And the jump Rudy has made in the last 3 years, just from getting on stage so much, it's like incredible to watch him.
Has he been doing 3 years?
Huh?
Rudy, have you been doing stand-up 3 years?
Probably like about 5 altogether. But
wow.
I had a background in entertainment, radio guy, was also a stage actor, voiceover, but full-time comedy, probably only 5 years.
And let me tell you, when he's on stage, I see your book in real life, like being like how he cuts down things, how he reverses things. Like I see literally your book on stage, like with his performance, like it's become so sharp.
Wow. Thanks. Yeah. And one thing that I love about the book, but one of the things I really took away from it was when you talked about the trifecta. It's what you say, how you say it, and what you look like. And when you can find all 3 of those things, that's where you really harmonize. And that's where audiences will really ingest you and they will laugh. And I tried so many times, and even up until the last maybe like 6 months, when Michael and I would go on the road and I'm like, tonight I'm going to try wearing a suit jacket. Tonight, I'm going to try a hat. Tonight, I'm going to try something. And finally, at some point, this wasn't that long ago.
Finally, you were pretty clothed.
Yeah. They were all see-through. But no, finally, at some point, I just thought, you know what? Maybe instead of trying so hard with all of those things, like, you talk about your persona and your character being right under the surface. For so many sets, I would try to slow my pace down. I would try to mug. And it was like, I hate that. It feels so unnatural. But when I just go up and I talk fast and I move fast, that's where my biggest laughs happen.
Yeah. In Dubai, I had to slow down because it was such an international audience. And I said to the organizers, I said, I can only slow down so much because otherwise I won't be me. My excitement is driving me. So someone came up to me all 6 nights and said, I did struggle to follow you. And I said, look, I'm sorry, but if I slowed down too much, no one would enjoy it. you know?
Yeah.
But the outfit thing, I mean, I got an email the other day from a girl and she said, I put a bow in my hair and it does wonders for how the audience perceives me. And I haven't seen her perform. She didn't send me a link. And I just thought, just that thing of just thinking about it could be a hanky in your top pocket that's overflowing because it's been shoved in casually, you know, a hanky that's looking badly put in. It shows you've got ready in a hurry, but you're still trying to make a good impression. And if your comedy shows that, I mean, Stephen Wright, there's early Stephen Wright where he's got an iron shirt, he's clean shaven with a neat haircut. He's doing the same kind of brilliant, surreal material, but it doesn't seem believable coming from him because he's ironed his shirt and he's shaved that day.
Yeah.
You know, Stephen Wright looks like he's too intelligent to bother shaving. You know, he's got that Krusty the Clown, big hair, and he looks like he's rubbing his head. He's got these thoughts that are so clever and deep because he's in his brain that he can't cope with how clever he is. Well, those people don't shave.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I have a friend who's just blown up over here. He started wearing a cowboy hat. He couldn't find, nothing was hitting. He started wearing a cowboy hat, selling out theaters now. And same comedian, same jokes. He just added the personality of a cowboy hat.
Wow. And the hat's so big,
genius.
it fills all the seats up.
Yes. Yeah. It's crazy how perception is reality. And my wife, I wear all black. And my wife is like, try something different. Like, because I feel like my audience is, I know my audience 100%. It's women that bring their husbands to a show, but their husbands don't really know who I am. But after the show, they really like it. So I'm the one, like, wives bring their husbands to the show. Yeah, 100%.
Because Jim Jeffries is the exact opposite.
Oh, yeah. Jim Jeffries is a personal friend of mine. I love Jim Jeffries. I told him I was in him.
He was at my wedding.
Yeah, Jim Jeffries is such a great guy, man. Every time he comes to Vegas, I live in Vegas. Every time he comes, I go to his show, and sometimes he puts me on. But I love Jim. Jim is such a great dude. Is there any joke that you ever written for someone else and you were like, I wish I would have kept it?
Not really, because I'm always there was one person, I can't remember the line, but we're in a meeting face to face, and I said, if you don't do this, I'm having this because it suits me too. And they did it, so I couldn't have it. And someone said to me, well, aren't you tempted to keep them to yourself when you think of that? And the truth is, it's a conscience thing. If I'm thinking about their bit and I have an idea, you could argue that I wouldn't have had my idea without their seed. So therefore, that's a form of plagiarism. You know, when you think of a joke that sounds a bit like something else, you have to ask yourself, would I have thought of it if the other line hadn't entered my consciousness? And if the answer is no, then you can't do it because that's a form of plagiarism. You know, people go, oh, there are only 7 jokes in the world. There are infinite jokes in the world. If there are only 7 jokes in the world, why don't academic people watch comedy and go 4, 6, 9, 2, 7? They don't. Because a new idea exists. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. Hell of a lot of books. There's only 8 notes in an octave. You know, a piano is the same 8 notes repeated, right? And the sharps and minuses. But there's 8 notes in an octave, and you can copyright a tune, a sample. You can play 3 seconds of notes, and that belongs to you. 6 months ago, somebody on a world tour got in touch with me, and I told them my fee, and they said, well, let's call it this, and they made it about 40% higher. Very generous, right?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I went, you know what? If someone's going to be on Netflix with my material, as opposed to someone who's going to be in a comedy club playing to 50, 100, 200 people a night, they should be paying more because the product's being seen by far more people. So as of then, 6 months ago, bear in mind that's 20 years in, I had a stadium filling fee. I got 2 rates, but I had the same rate for 20 years because I thought it would be exploitative to say to someone, I'll charge you more because of who you are. But if someone's going on earning tens of millions of dollars plus Netflix fees, and one joke is arguably worth $10,000 because of 100%. How much. Yeah, so I did, but I suppose there's a part of me, you know, I grew up with kind of, you know, left-wing values, and it's a bit capitalist, isn't it? Going, you pay this, you pay this. But yeah, so 20 years in, I realized on the back of one person that it's okay to charge someone a bit more. But you could look at it differently. You could say there's this fee, and everyone else gets a discount because they're not famous. That's true, right?
Yeah. So whatever makes you feel better, Adam.
It's true.
However you want to look at it. However you want to look at it.
People always just like, I cheated on my wife, but she did burn the toast this morning.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Can I ask you real quick about persona? Because you do talk about this a little bit in the book, and coming to terms with who you really are on stage. I think that is such a tough thing for comics to figure out. Is, they see these people that they love and they try to mimic that, and then eventually at some point you do start to do your own thing. But then even from finding your own thing, coming to grips with who you really are on stage. I would love to be able to just sit on a stool and tell jokes and just talk monotone. It doesn't work for me. I've tried it. But at some point I went, okay, I guess you're just going to have to talk fast and move around the stage. And that's just the way it works.
I think I was very impressed when I watched a clip of you. You didn't look like you've been going 5 years. There was attitude, and you got. I think there was something authentic about you just saying something a little bit opinionated and just running with it and going, look, I'm sorry, this is how I feel, and just bombarding us with that. I felt that was, authentic. And if you'd sat down and told jokes, maybe something in you that was shining would be suppressed, and therefore you would never really be as fun as you could be. But some people start off doing. I've seen some style changes you wouldn't believe. I've seen some significant style changes from people who went on to be quite successful because they were just finding, you're just playing around. My first 3 months, I was copying a comedian called Ben Elton. All my material was my own, but just the attitude and the rhythm, because I'd overdosed them as a teenager. I thought that's what comedy is. And I think that it's completely acceptable to be mimicking your heroes when you start, as long as, one, it's your material, and two, you soon acknowledge what you're doing and you shed your skin. And for me, it took 3 years to end up being who I was down the pub with my friends at 19 years old, when I was holding cool and mucking around. That was my clown. That was my happy place. But it's a case of having the confidence to allow yourself to just be authentic, because you think comedy is this, so I have to do that. And then gradually you have the confidence to just be yourself. And when I say be yourself, of course, you turn down, it's a graphic equalizer. I don't show my temper. I don't show my spiteful side. Everyone's capable of being spiteful. If someone's really pissed you off, you might say something cutting about their character. But I'm not going to do a joke about someone on television in the news. I'm not going to talk about Will Smith punching Chris Rock and then break down his character, what he's revealed about his personality, because I think that was quite a shocking moment for us all. I wouldn't talk about that because my persona doesn't allow those opinions to come out. Because someone said to me once, I've got all sorts of opinions in real life, so why shouldn't I do them on stage? And I said, well, yeah, but you urinate in real life, but you do that before and after your gig. You don't piss in a bucket.
It's interesting, following off of that, when I first started comedy, probably my first 3-4 years, I've been doing it 13 years. So my first 3 or 4 years, I would make very, I don't want to say mean jokes about myself, but really self-deprecating. And the audience, you would feel them be upset at me. Because on stage, I'm a very...
Is, Michael, do you know what that is?
No.
Because you're very unattractive.
There it is. That's what I thought it was. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. There was something,
but no.
Your audience just didn't, it didn't connect. It just didn't connect, right?
Because I'm this is what I'm told. I'm a likable guy, and they don't want me to talk bad about myself. And I found that interesting, so I had to shift that a little. So instead of going hard on myself, I had to lighten up a bit. So it's interesting how you learn different things throughout. I want to ask you this. Rudy knows, I know, we've all known comedians that have blown up. The difference is I haven't written for any comedians that have blown up, and you have. Is there a certain part of your brain, your mentality goes, I write a lot of stuff for different people. Why haven't I blown up?
Not really.
To that level.
Not really. So I had a lot of success very quickly. I was on television 2 years in. I was regular on television 4 years in. I got a Universal retainer deal with Universal Video at 28 years old. It didn't happen. I didn't make a DVD. They gave me money, and it didn't happen. So I won. So the point is, I've won awards. I've traveled the world. I've broken box office records at a festival before. I've had plenty of moments when I've gone, I'm validated. Now, the reason I don't mind that it didn't quite happen, because I was a guy that really nearly got big and didn't, is I still do what I love.
Yep.
I feed my children. I don't crave expensive things. My hobby's close-up magic. Pack of bicycles. That's all I need. That's all I need. I'm very happy with that. I don't need
There you go.
I don't need a nice car. I'm seriously, I don't need a nice car. So if you love your work more than money, then you'll never be bitter as long as you're working.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
So true. Unless you have a wife that spends all your money.
I can go, what up? I've got an ex who does it.
Okay.
So
Checkmate.
I don't even see the goods. I don't even see it. So this is the thing, right? I wrote for somebody who's not a comedian. They've got 11 million followers on Instagram. And I wrote a line for them when they got an Oscar nomination. And my line got quoted in Time magazine, credited to them. And when I Googled the line, loads of people are talking how brilliant the line. Look at him, he's amazing. Within a day of getting an Oscar, he's come out with that. And I sat there sort of thinking to myself, well, I wrote that, but I'm getting to see the reaction, which is positive. I created it. That's not that different to going on stage and seeing them laughing. It's just, if the end product is people feeling good because you've been creative, I don't need the credit. No.
Have you ever seen them do the joke and go, nah, they didn't do it quite right?
Oh God. So there's one guy, he only used me once, and he's a stadium filler. And my fee was included to go to his show and watch him do my stuff. And backstage, I said, oh, you know that thing about the thing? I said, you said it wrong because basically I was trying to save the joke because he didn't do it justice, and I'm just wanting to give it another chance. And he looked at me and went, yeah, almost like, let me get this right. You're telling me how to do things? Really? Not sure about that. So I thought to myself, well, maybe it's best to let it go. But I care. I think I care more about the comedy than the comedian. Both of you have to take your egos out of it. If they don't like my line, fine. And if I find a better version of their line, they've got to step back and go, is that funnier? Because part of you goes, oh, I thought I was brilliant. Turns out someone thinks they're better than me. There's no ego. We collectively go, what's the best version of this idea we can find? But if they go on stage and they don't do it justice, it's a tough one because you're telling someone who can sell out a 15,000 seater that they're doing it wrong. And they're like, And of course, it's intelligent to detach your ego and go, yeah, you've got a good point. But it's one guy did not like being told he did the line wrong.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I started doing this thing recently where she's a creative, she makes videos, and I will write jokes and then send them to her. And sometimes I would only want her just to laugh. I don't need your feedback on this. I just want you to read it and go, oh, that's funny or whatever. And she would send me videos and I would watch them and then I would critique them. And then she would get upset by it and go, I didn't want you to critique it. I just wanted you to watch this and enjoy it. I go, okay. So I noticed that it would cause little rifts between us. So we started doing this thing now whenever we send somebody a piece of, I'd send her jokes or she sends me videos, we always preface it with, before I read this or before I watch this, is this for enjoyment or do you want my feedback on this? And then she will say, I would love your feedback on it. I go, okay. And then I watch it through a different lens.
Yeah.
Because it's just not worth getting into arguments about stuff. Yeah. For what?
Yeah, but the difference is they're paying him to come out to shows.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess my girlfriend would say that she's paying me in other ways to critique her videos. So yeah.
100%. 100%.
Imagine Ben saying, before we do this, are you doing this because you want me to enjoy it or do you want me to just tell you how bad it is first?
Exactly.
Yeah, a little bit less teeth, please.
Yeah. Talking about the masterclass, one of the things that if anybody who watches this wants to read your book or take that masterclass, one of the things that they learn about is the Seesaw Method. And one of the things that I'm going to start doing in this next 20-minute chunk I'm going to start writing is I want to kind of take a little bit from your version of writing, which is I don't sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write my own stuff. I just sort of do the dishes and I walk and I clean the garage. And then do you take some of those thoughts and then take those thoughts, maybe just make a quick note on your iPhone and then go back in and sort of plug it into the formula, quote unquote?
No.
Okay.
I didn't count syllables until I wrote the book. So the Seesaw, just for the listeners, I noticed that when a punchline has a pause in the middle, not the setup, when the punchline itself has a pause, it works almost inevitably if there are fewer syllables in one half than the other. So it can be. I look at it as a seesaw with a heavier person at one end. It can go 2 syllables, pause 5. It can go 5 syllables, 2 or 3. What matters is there's more on one side than the other. Now, I was writing for somebody 10 years ago, and I changed one of their lines in a meeting, and he said, "Why did you change that?" And I went, and it just came out. If a punchline's got a pause in a minute, there should be more syllables on one side than the other. It came out. I was doing stand-up for 20 years before it came out. And in the book, I gave examples where I count the syllables. I haven't counted a single syllable. I'm going to give you an example of a punchline of mine with the Seesaw. It's got anticipation. It's a practical joke playing on old people. And I won't talk you through it, but the punchline goes, "And I think they're ahead of me. They think they're dead." Right? That's 8-4. That's 8-4. So the pause is anticipation and rhythm, right? "And I think you're ahead of me. They think they're dead." Now listen to this. "Are you ahead of me? They think that they're dead."
Yeah.
6-5. 4-8. Sorry, 8-4 flows much better than 6-5. Listen to this. "Are you ahead of me? They think that they're dead." It's too even.
Yeah.
This was an E equals MC squared moment. And
Yeah.
and I probably had emails from 500, 600, 700 people specifically talking about the Seesaw. But I credit my mum, because when I was a kid, my mum told me that short surnames go with longer surnames, vice versa. Michael Yo is a Seesaw, 2-1. Rudy Pavic is not. And that's why he's got more followers than you on Instagram.
Before we let you go, one piece of advice for anyone starting comedy, what would it be from you?
Clearly read my book.
There you go.
And don't choose the name Rudy Pavic.
Here, this is my advice. Spend as much time thinking of the wording of your jokes as you do spend on CapCut getting the captions to be correct. And the other thing is, when I started out, you did an hour show at the Edinburgh Festival, and you focused on the few bits that didn't work and you tweaked them. Now people get the short clip because they're focused on the only bit that does work, and they're putting it online. You've got an hour of material. This bit worked, this bit worked, this bit worked. Now I'm going to spend ages editing it and getting the right captions to the correct wording. There's no typos. So you're obsessing over the tiny bits that do work and ignoring the bits that don't. So spend time on the bits that don't work.
All right. Well, Adam, everybody check out his book, Finding Your Comedic Genius. Thank you so much for joining the show, man.
It's been an absolute delight, and it's so lovely to meet you both. And Rudy, I've got to say, Michael, you support me by having me on the podcast, but Rudy has championed me to so many people that have contacted me about writing work, other stuff. Rudy, you've been so helpful. You won't even realize this.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Your book really, I'm genuinely, when I say this, it honestly changed the way I look at not only the writing of comedy, but also the presentation of comedy and what comedy is as an industry as a whole. It really was career changing for me.
Well, thank you.